Hi, and welcome to the Chasing Care podcast. On today's episode, I'm delighted to say that we have Debbie Harris from Autumna. Now, not everyone will know what Autumna is, but I can tell you that she's been around the care sector since 2006, and I'm delighted to find out what she's going to tell me about her Auntie Margaret, because that's where I understand the journey started, back in 2006. We've come a long way since then. On the episode, what we're going to focus on is retirement living. Now, it's a pretty obvious statement to say that we're going to talk about retirement living because we talk about care in the community. But there are facts and figures that we probably haven't got a clue about because most people think about care homes. Well, there's such a thing as seniors housing, retirement housing, integrated care communities. And it's really important that we expand the thought process for the elderly and vulnerable as to what choices they have. Before I ask Debbie to introduce herself, I just want to put a few numbers on the table. In 2023, there's about 6.3 million elderly people over the age of 75. In 2028, that is set to increase by 11%. And by 2040, the numbers increased to 8.76 million. That's a 38% increase in the elderly population. So we need to be able to look after them, and they need to make good choices about where they want to spend their later life. So let's introduce Debbie Harris. Hi, and welcome to the Chasing Care podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. So before we get started, who are you? What do you do?
Okay, so Debbie Harris, I'm the founder and managing director of Autumna. Autumna is an online directory of social care and retirement housing for people over the age of 65. So it is very much in the older sector of the market, although I'll be honest, from where I'm sitting, 65 doesn't sound very old, but it's very much, we very much focus on not middle-aged requirements, but older requirements. We support people who are looking for care homes, home care, live-in care, and increasingly retirement living.
And I was looking at some of the numbers. You're a directory, free for the people that are looking for care. So you do represent something like 10,000 care homes, 12,000 home care providers, 1,400 live-in care services, and 1,800 odd retirement living developments.
Yeah.
You see, that's the thing on the end of it that I didn't know much about. So tell me, what is a retirement living development as opposed to a care home? Because everyone knows what a care home is.
Yeah. Well, they think they do until they start looking for one. So I would question that statement. But you made an interesting point earlier about people making the right choices when they're looking for any sort of later life support. And I think that is the founding principle that Autumna works on. For us, what we need to do is we need to make sure that anybody who is looking for care or later life support make an informed choice about what they do next and who they engage with. In order to make an informed choice, we need care providers and operators of retirement developments to provide the information online within an easy to compare, easy to understand format. And I emphasize that point because pre-COVID, that wasn't really the case. A lot of providers and a lot of operators had their own website, but you needed to know where to go to find that. Post-COVID, during and post-COVID, that has fundamentally changed. So, for example, we estimate 90% of people who are self-funding their care and they are looking for a care home will do their research, 90% of their research online. That is an incredible amount, and that really was not happening pre-COVID. Now, as far as retirement living is concerned, I would estimate it's even higher, because you mentioned we've got 1,800 developments, retirement developments on our platform. Those are the ones we can find. There is no central directory of retirement operators. And it is really hard if you don't live in a county or you don't know of a particular retirement development that you're looking for. It is really hard to find them. You can't search, you can't put into Google retirement homes near me. And the reason you can't do that, whereas you can with care homes near me, the reason you can't do it with retirement villages is everybody calls their village something different. Assisted living, extra care, retirement housing, supported living. There are 24 different terms. So you can't pull all of those results in on Google. You need to go onto a directory to actually find where the developments are in order to compare what is available to you in different locations. Really interesting.
I think that's a fascinating point, because when we were doing a little bit of research ahead of this, yes, we do a little bit of research before we do a podcast. I know, shocking. And I was looking at a report which was out fairly recently, actually, and it indicates that there's something like, for retirement housing, and maybe we'll definitely talk about the difference between retirement housing and integrated retirement communities. But for retirement housing, whatever that is, there's 23,000 schemes in the UK, and there's 1,770 IRCs. That caters currently, here's the big number, 800,000 people in retirement housing and another 120,000 in IRCs. That means there's about 1 million people currently that are in this form of housing.
And only 240,000 people in a care home.
Oh.
That figure's stayed stable for about 10 years, if not longer. It's a really interesting dynamic, isn't it? And yet it's so little understood. You mentioned, you mentioned Auntie Margaret earlier.
Yeah. Let's talk about Auntie Margaret.
Yeah. Well, if I had known what a retirement village was when I was looking for a care home for Auntie Margaret, she would have gone into a retirement village, not a care home.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We hear that a lot about this as well in terms of live-in care, don't we?
Yeah.
It's a case of, what is live-in care? And now we're hearing, what is retirement living?
Yeah.
What is a retirement village?
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to travel extensively, and in America and Australia and places like that, they're all over the place. That's normal. That's what you do, isn't it? You go into a nice gated community or something of that nature.
And it's almost aspirational, isn't it? It's almost aspirational, yeah. Whereas here, there's just such a lack of understanding. And as you said, a lot of people get it confused with a care home. And I think what you're seeing with the IRCs and the ARCA regulated retirement communities is you're seeing that merge of care being offered within a retirement village setting. And, we support retirement villages, or we market retirement villages, and there can be anything from an apartment for the over 65s with, no community spaces, nothing at all the way down to something that is fully supported and almost able to do end-of-life care and anything in between. And I think it is this vast range of opportunity that it offers people at any point in their journey, and at any budget as well, with the increase in rentals. And that's the difficulty in getting across what this sector actually offers and the benefits.
Yeah, I was looking at more numbers. I mean, I don't want to make this a statistics fest, but I think it's really important, though. We do look at numbers. I think it's something like 72% of all seniors housing in the UK is really local authority or housing associations. So it's not, it's the people that are needy that are being looked after by the state, more than those people that might have the funds but are trying to find a better end to the way that they're living. Is that a fair reflection from what
I'd say it is. And we see unquestionably, people who are looking for social housing and support understand the sector. They understand what assisted living or supported living is. Whereas when you get into the private market that we tend to support more, when you get into the private market, that is where the uncertainty comes in. So with Autumna as a directory, we are probably at the top of an operator's funnel. So somebody knows enough about retirement living to go and look for it online. And then they come into us and we get a lot of inquiries for retirement living. But then they have to go down the learning funnel, if you like, before they actually purchase or rent at the end. And the key issues I think the sector faces is people, because there's not a wide range of understanding and knowledge of retirement villages, people tend to be looking when it's potentially a bit too late. I think the average age of somebody living in a retirement village is 82. That is the same age as a care home. Now, obviously that differs depending on the villages, but that's the average age across the sector. But if you're starting to look when you're 80, 81, and you've got all of these hurdles that you have to jump over before you can actually move in, like selling your own property, like physically downsizing, going from your 4-bedroomed house to a 1 or 2-bedroomed flat is a significant move. And it's that emotional hurdle as well. Do I get rid of all of the kids' photos and school stuff? And it's very emotional to do. And I think some people just find it too difficult. It goes in the too difficult pile.
Yes, and I have to defend the ineptitude of most people in the UK across the board, not just when they're looking for retirement living, because nearly every purchase for the elderly or vulnerable is a crisis purchase, because we're not educated in looking after ourselves and planning for the future. That's, again, part of the Chasing Care podcast. The reason we exist is to get the general public more aware, more savvy, more ready to make good and informed decisions when they can make those decisions. And one of the big aspects that we've touched on a few times on the episodes here is about power of attorney. Because at the age of 82, you may not be totally fit to make good decisions. And so therefore you've got to have somebody that might guide you effectively. But we're trying to bring the ages earlier, that's for sure. I mean, I've seen a report that says, it's definitely by the age of 75 that people are seriously thinking about downsizing. So although the numbers might be 82 currently, I think what we're seeing is that people aged 75 are now at that serious point, maybe at an age when they can.
I think almost to a man, when you speak to somebody who is living in a retirement village, they will say, "God, I wish I'd done this earlier," because they're getting so much out of it. Yeah, I think, one of the ways to educate people and to reassure them that, yes, it's a big move, but it's the right move, is what a lot of operators are doing, which is holding events and inviting the local community in to those events. And I'm seeing a real increase in those. And, it could be something as simple as knit and natter, or as somebody said the other day, theirs is called stitch and bitch. And I thought that's an interesting concept. But Thursday
Getting down with the kids there.
Thursday Murder Mystery Club. The book.
Yeah.
And the fact they're doing a film, I think that will do wonders for people to think, oh, you don't just go there to sort of sit quietly. You go there to live, to enjoy your life, to have a community around you, to have friends and to do things. So I think there's a lot going on that I hope will pull people in more. And there's certainly a lot going on around Christmas usually in the developments. And they're good fun.
And while we're talking about personal experiences, were we? I think maybe we were. I still haven't got the full picture about your auntie, but we'll get there. My mother-in-law, or should I say ex-mother-in-law, now in her 80s with her husband, they needed to move out of their accommodation. It was down a hill, basically. That's all it was. It was down a hill, difficult to get the car up the hill backwards. They were struggling, so they thought they'd look for another place to live. And they came across retirement housing. a little scheme in Solihull in the Birmingham area. And she said vehemently, I am not going to associate myself with all those old people. Even if I do move in, we're not going to integrate ourselves like that. It's a nice place to live, but I don't want to do it. Well, you can't get her out of the community room now. She
Hear this
is
all
there every day.
all
Absolutely loves it.
yeah. I hear
But
this.
they think their independence has been lost if they think about moving into some of these environments. And probably, I have to say, I'm bound to say this, that I think care homes, maybe some of that independence is taken away.
Oh, I think it is. Yes. I think the difference between care homes and retirement living is starting to blur, in as much as care homes seem to be supporting people with a higher acuity of need. The retirement developments, who might traditionally have been supported living, are moving up into their care support. So you're sort of getting retirement living, just nudging the bottom end of care homes and offering the support that might have been seen in a residential care home, for example. And that's pushing the care home's resident need higher. There's definitely an overlap, and we're seeing retirement developments being much more proactive with the care that they're offering. And that's, of course, where the IRCs came in.
Let's dig a bit deeper, if I may, around the question of what is this seniors housing sector. We talked about retirement housing. We talked about integrated retirement communities. We talk about care homes. And you just mentioned about this crossover. But can you make it clear to the listener? First of all, let's start with retirement housing. What is retirement housing?
Well, that depends what you're calling retirement housing. So are you calling exactly that? This is the difficulty with the sector. There are 24 different terms and everybody interprets the term differently. So if I start with, I'm going to start with care homes. A care home is, only because it's simpler to describe, a care home is within a building and you have your own room, usually with an ensuite, but not always. And you have a communal dining room and a communal sitting room. And there is care on site 24/7. A retirement development is your own apartment. So you have your own kitchen, your own bathroom, your own bedroom, and your own sitting room. There may or may not be a communal sitting room. There may or may not be a communal dining room. You are in a community, but you have your own little apartment. You can bring in your own care if you need it. And some of these developments have care on site that is provided for you within whatever package that you have. Another distinction is, if you think about it, when you're in a care home, you are in effect renting the room. So it's a rental model. When you're in a retirement development, you have the option of purchase or rent or a bit of both. So it's, and as I said, the lines are becoming more blurred between the two.
We looked at the numbers in terms of rental for these developments.
Yeah.
And frankly, you couldn't put a number on it.
Yes.
Because we looked at a 1-bedroomed apartment and you could rent that minimum about 450 quid a month. Top end, £5,800. Yeah. So, the average is about £1,200.
It all depends how much care is being offered and what's being included. So the rental model actually makes it slightly more difficult to understand if you're looking, because as you've just said, do you go for the 450 or do you go for the 5,000? And when you're looking, how do you know on the face of it which is offering the better value? If you need the support, if you want all of your meals included, if you want all of your activities included, then in reality, the 5,000 a month might offer you better value. But it's a very, very difficult decision to make when you're renting. The other thing that I'm not sure has been fully understood is inheritance tax. So if you are renting and you've put your lump sum of money from the sale of your house, and unless you're looking after that properly and getting proper financial advice, you could be subject to inheritance tax on that, and because it's outside of your main property ownership. So there is an inheritance tax issue that I don't know how closely people are looking at that. But the benefits of renting, of course, are should you need to have more care. So historically, if you purchased a retirement property, you purchased it, you lived in it for 2, 3, 4 years, however long you live in it. You then no longer need it because you go to a care home, for example, and the family then has to sell that retirement property. Historically, resales on retirement property have been slow. We think they are starting to pick up. I think there is a real opportunity using directories like ours, actually, to get across to people that there is a resale market. You don't have to buy a new one, and the resale market can sometimes be, you're moving into a more established community rather than a new community. So you can see what the vibrancy is like. You can see what the personality of the community is like. I think there's a real opportunity on resales. But yeah, we'll see how it pans out on the rental.
Looking to the future, however, I indicated that at the beginning of this episode that the number of elderly is going to grow by, I think it was 38% or something like that by 2040. And looking at the numbers that were promoted in a recent report, it does indicate that there's going to be a shortfall of something like 31,000 units or 695 schemes by about 2030.
Right.
So even though there's a market for retirement villages, communities, it doesn't look as if the market's going to be there for the people that might want it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, this. So there's been a lot of money that's gone into retirement villages, a lot of investment gone into it. But I think to date, the sales velocity has not kept up with the hopes of the investor. So sales are slow. And that comes down to education. That comes down to people not actually understanding what the benefits are. And there's also an argument, that says, are the developments that are being built actually what people want?
I like that.
What
I do know is currently the market is supporting something like 15% of the over 75s. It doesn't mean to say that it should be 50% or 60%. I'm just saying that it's 15%.
Are you sure it's 15, Gavin? Sure it's that high?
15.4% is the current senior housing market.
I wonder whether or not that's social housing as well.
Might well be. Might well include social housing.
Yeah.
Because 72% of that market is social housing.
Yeah.
But it's a very good question, though. But let's not dwell on too much about is it fit for purpose or is it what people need? But that is a very, very good question. And let's go back to the beginning again. I like going back because you mentioned that 90% of people looking for care homes would do it online. And we think that probably a lot more people would look for this retirement senior housing online. But from your experience, why? I mean, why isn't it that they ask somebody else or let's even go back for even further. So it's a critical crisis purchase that I'm thinking about. I'm now 80, should be 75, but I'm 80 now. I don't use the bloody internet to look for anything. So why are you telling me that 80, 90, 100% of people are going to go online and do it? I'm just jumping into this episode, which I hope you're enjoying, to ask for a favour. It's really important to us to get likes, shares, following and comments about the Chasing Care podcast in order to build the audience. So if you know anybody that's in the care sector or thinking about care for a family member, maybe you could recommend and share. Let's get back to the episode.
Okay, so it's 90% of people who are looking for a care home, because it will be their children who are looking for the care home, will do so online. When you're looking for retirement development, it is a split really between the children thinking, let's see if there's anything around here, and the actual individual themselves. And my mum and dad are 90 and 92. I celebrated my mum's 90th birthday yesterday, and they both
Happy birthday, Mum.
So yeah, happy birthday, Mum. And they both use the internet, lightly, but they would be able to search. And, Mum said yesterday at her birthday party, we were trying to find an answer to a quiz. She said, hang on, I'll Google it. That's not bad, is it?
That's cheating. I'd just say that is cheating.
Yeah. So I think they are much more savvy than we potentially give them credit for. But also, if I was worried about my mum and dad, I'd be the one doing the searching. So that's where I think the demand online comes from. And the reason you need to do it online is we see this quite a lot. And there's one guy that, particularly a client that I spoke to a few months ago, that I always think of whenever I talk about this. Everybody, when they're building a retirement development, assumes that their market, their potential customer, is within a 5 or 10 mile radius. And we are not seeing that. So we are seeing about 50% of people who are looking for retirement living will live more than 50 miles away from where they currently live. So how do you find somewhere that is somewhere you don't particularly know? Because as I've already said, you can't search online for retirement housing near me. You can't do it because there's too many different search terms.
I love this. I didn't even think about this aspect, that people are going to move away from where they... I thought it was a big enough move, Debbie, to give up your home, let alone move 50 miles.
You're moving location.
And I make the assumption, because I just bumped into a few people over the past few days who've sold their houses near me, that are moving closer to their loved ones, closer to their daughter. And exactly. Now you're saying, well, maybe that's not even the case. So Are they all moving to Scarborough because that's healthy? I don't know. Why are they moving 50 miles away?
And you're absolutely right. It is loved ones. So the chap that I was speaking to, when I said to him, where are you looking? He said, Kent, Sussex or Surrey. And I said, 3 counties. 3 counties. That is, goodness knows how you would search for that on Google. And I said, why? And he said, I have a son or a daughter in each county. And he actually then did make the caveat. He said, whilst I want to live near one of them, he said, I don't want to be too close. So, 10 miles outside each of their houses would be great. But that was the point. So they're moving from where they have lived for the last 20, 30 years, and they're moving to another county. And we see that quite a lot. Quite a lot.
Again, another interesting point that you just touched upon, which I'm sure the listener can relate to, if they're the elderly end of the spectrum, because the over 75s, they want their independence. Yeah. They don't want to go into care homes. We know that. The data clearly says they do not want to go into care homes. In fact, the people in their 50s don't want to go into care homes. So care homes, I'm sorry, but you're just being pushed out of the market here. But the interesting point that I was going to make is they are happy to maybe live near their loved ones, but they don't want their son or daughter interfering with their day. They don't want them as carers. If they wanted carers, they'd have an external professional carer. Thank you very much. Stay out of my life.
Yeah. It's about having your own community and friends, isn't it? And this is the one thing I think that comes across really clearly with people who are living in a retirement community. Exactly that, the community. It's, on a personal note, I've actually said to my husband, if I die before him, he's got to promise me he will go into a retirement community, because otherwise he will become so isolated and not cook and all the rest of it. But that is what he would need. And I would do the same, because I wouldn't want to live in my house on my own, because I would find it a bit scary, to be honest. And so we have both agreed That is what we would do when we're single. We don't. Perhaps a better word.
That's another interesting aspect there. The sense of feeling safe.
Oh, very much so.
And
Mm.
again, I don't mean this podcast to be having a go at care homes, but there's too many stories out there about them being unsafe. But that doesn't provide an answer to the next question that I've got, which sort of tags onto the searching for retirement living accommodation, maybe in a different county. These places, are they regulated by somebody so you can check them out? Because if you've got live-in care services or domiciliary care services coming into your home, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. So who regulates retirement living?
Okay, 2 questions there. So the first one about unsafe care homes. My only comment to that, Gavin, is don't listen to everything you read in the press, because honestly, I have the greatest respect for care homes, and I think they do a challenging job that you would be unable to do unless you really wanted to do it. And I think a lot of people really want to do it and just support their residents. Unfortunately, the press very rarely publishes a good news story when it comes to social care. So I think they
And
get
we should
really
also say that they are a regulated service.
very much so.
It's important
Although
for
the Care Quality Commission is in a bit of a meltdown at the moment and is not inspecting any regulated services regularly enough for it to be, well, Wes Streeting said in March, the CQC is not worth the paper it's written on. We're actually working with care homes to help them demonstrate the quality of their care and service via something called Open Score. And that's just been launched for care homes. And that's a real-time quality score on the care home. So that's a really useful tool until the CQC have got themselves sorted out a bit. But you mentioned about regulating retirement villages. Now, an IRC can be regulated by ARCO. So, and these are retirement villages that offer a level of care, and ARCO regulates them. They have to adhere to a set of standards.
Can I ask,
No.
ARCO, what's that, please?
Yeah, please don't ask me to tell you what it stands for because I can never remember. But it is an independent organisation that has members. And to be a member of ARCO, you need to offer some sort of support, care support, and that would be regulated care support, regulated by the CQC. But you also have to adhere to other standards of ARCO. So in other words, if you're putting your pricing online, it has to be within certain guidelines so that you're really clear about what added costs there might be. It's quite a stringent regulation, actually.
The good news is Google works as well, by the way.
Sorry?
I've just Googled it for us.
Good.
The Associated Retirement Community Operators,
Okay.
which is the main body representing the integrated retirement community sector in the UK and was founded in 2012.
Yeah. But this is just for retirement communities that offer a level of care and are members of ARCO. The remainder, there is no regulation. It's housing.
Okay.
If you bring care in, so you're living in a retirement property and you need home care, then your home care agency would be regulated. If you need personal care, it would be regulated by the CQC.
And if the environment is offering us that as part of the package?
That would be regulated if it was personal care. If it's just companionship, somebody doing your shopping or doing a bit of housework, then that's not regulated any more than it would be if you got a cleaner into your house. But yeah, any personal care is regulated.
Let me ask you a question then, as an industry expert. You've just mentioned about the care homes and how you're helping them get their standards clear, their quality clear to the service user, to the potential service user. And in terms of the retirement housing, IRCs and the like, if you were looking, what advice would you give to somebody, other than going on Google, obviously, But what advice would you give to them that they should be thinking about, or what sort of questions how should they go about it, Debbie?
Then, okay, what would you do? So I would, first of all, a bit like when you're buying a house, so whether you're looking to rent or purchase, work out where you need to be first. It's all about location. Do you want to be near family? Do you want to stay in your current community? So location first, then understand what your budget is and be realistic about it. If you're 80, you really don't want to spend a year trying to sell your house because you put it on at a bit too much money to start with. Yeah. So really understand clearly what your budget is and understand what you want to do with any balance that you might have and how that will support you for the rest of your life. So I guess basically the second thing is get financial advice. Get financial advice so that you've got an expert explaining to you how that's going to work, how your finances are going to work going forwards. And then once you've got your location and you've understood your budget, then it's a case of researching what is available in your area. And what would I be looking for? I would be going to the events at the communities. And because I think it is, let's face it, a 2-bed flat is a 2-bed flat wherever you are. And on Autumna, whilst we list the individual the properties that are available, our profile is actually all about the development. What is it that makes this development different from this development? They both have 2-bed flats, but what makes them different? And that is the bit you want to get under the skin of. So, do you want an environment that has a coffee shop, a vibrant coffee shop on site? Do you want one that has fine dining on site? Do you want one that has a swimming pool, a gym? Do you not want any of that? You just want a little sitting room that people use, because that's the other thing. It might be a community sitting room, but does anybody ever go in it? Is it warm? Is it inviting? Can you make a cup of tea? Can you invite friends in? Can I take my dog? Yeah. Somebody said to me the other week, does the community have a wine cellar? I can keep all my wine in. Yeah. Right. Does it have buggy charging points? Does it have EV charging points? Does it have parking spaces at all? Am I still going to want to drive? Do I want to be in a town, or do I actually want to be in the countryside? So many different things to think about, and they're all so very personal. And I think that's why you need to go. You need to talk to the people who live there and see what they're like and whether or not they're your type of. Goes back to your ex-mother-in-law. Are they your type of people? That's what you need to find.
Sales jargon, marketing tools can be overpowering sometimes, though, can't they?
But that's
are there any organisations that you can speak to? Does Autumna provide any extra levels of advice rather than just being a directory? How does that work?
Yeah. So we have an online, we have an advice line that operates 7 days a week. So people can give us a call Thursday, Sunday afternoon at 3:00. Somebody will answer the phone if you call us, and we'll be able to actually give you some information. And if we don't know the answer, we will find a man who does, or a woman, actually, I should say, shouldn't I? So yeah, we will talk people through it, and that applies to home care, or retirement developments. Whatever you're doing, it's a big decision, and it's generally a costly decision. So you need to make sure you get this right. I think, hand on heart, I actually wish more people would understand and consider retirement living at an earlier age, because I really do think it offers huge benefits and improved quality of life. In fact, there's quite a few stats out there that show if you're in a community, in a vibrant community, your quality of life and your health improves.
And to be clear, we're not talking about people that necessarily need care the time that they make that decision. And we tend to think about care homes. You go there because you need support. That's probably
without question.
Yeah, that's what people think.
Yeah.
Maybe your loved ones, your sons and daughters living 50 miles away, and they can't get to you every weekend. is a bit of a worry, and it sort of comes up in a conversation, and then you get around to eventually making that decision with the family member that they want to have a community where they can feel a little bit safer and maybe supported. Uh, and I'm guessing that these villages, one of the beauties of them is if you pick the right one, and that's down to you knowing what to look for,
Mm.
you can you can include more services as you age and as you need them.
Mm.
One big question that I have is around dementia. Um, Unfortunately, it's a growing challenge for many people. Are these retirement environments suitable for people living with dementia, do you feel?
Mm. It varies, and that's why you need to visit, I think. So uh, you never know whether or not you're going to develop dementia, and you don't know how that dementia might present itself. There are some dementias that retirement villages, I would say, are not appropriate for. But I think there is a lot of support from your community and potentially home care on site or home care coming in that would be able to support a lot of low level dementia. Some retirement developments um, won't support dementia at all out of respect for the other residents, and others are very inclusive. So, and this comes back once again to how difficult it is to explain what retirement development does, because they are all very different personalities and levels of support.
And I know I've been talking, and I keep coming back to the over 75s because that's what the statistics sort of say. But I've noticed not far from me, these new developments are being thrown up over 50s. It's
Mm.
over 50s and over 55s
Mm.
living. Is that a sign of the times, do you think? Is that the positive news that you've been waiting for in terms of getting the message out there, or is that again just a marketing tool?
I think it's more a planning issue, to be perfectly honest. Um, I don't see, I'm from where I'm sitting, I don't see the average age reducing at the moment. But there might be some stats out there that I'm unaware of. I think the over 55s is a planning thing.
Hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? How
Um,
age 55, are you ready to move into a community village?
Probably not the way that our villages are currently populated. You know, you'd still be working age, driving in and out. Gosh, you might still have teenage children.
Yeah. Don't want to live around old people.
I think old people are great. And I think that mixed tenure is fantastic in as much as if you've got older and younger people together, um, that's the old family makeup, isn't it? So I think there's a lot to learn. But yeah, the way it's set up at the moment, it's perhaps not quite what society is ready for. I don't know. I might be wrong, but
You get a lot of Christmas presents though, wouldn't you?
you would.
That would be pretty
Lot of,
amazing.
a lot of baking and all sorts.
Yeah, good quality,
So
quality
good.
food. I like that. And we'll be talking about food and how that affects mental health and well-being for the elderly in at a later episode this year or early in next year. That'll be a fascinating question. Um, we're coming to the end. We're getting close to the end of our conversation today. It has been fascinating because it's such a big subject as ever. And we try and cover big subjects, but at the same time, it's a very personal subject for a lot of families. And I'd just like to finish on touching on the question of how do how do family members maybe raise the question with their mum or dad?
Mm.
Because mum or dad are probably not going to admit that they need something. They might be lonely, but they might not admit to it because they don't want to worry their children. And then we have the children that frankly are worried about their mum or dad, and they might even feel slightly, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, they might feel slightly resentful that they need to be running around quite so much as if they're part of the sandwich generation, they've got their kids and they've got mum and dad and maybe even grandparents.
Yes.
So they're feeling resentful. So from your perspective, as somebody who's been around this industry now for a very long time, and the aim of Autumna, as you indicate, is helping families find the best later life care.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to people in terms of raising the question within the family group as to what mum or dad should be thinking or planning for?
Yeah. Ooh, difficult one, as I was unable to persuade my own parents. Um, uh, um,
Maybe they should teach it at school.
yeah, well, it comes back down to education, doesn't it? But you know what? I think had I been more aware of the benefits 10 years ago, I would have said to my mum and dad, "Oh, there's an event going on up the road," and I would have taken them to an event. In fact, you know what? I did take them to a development about 15 years ago, but it was too early for them then. And they walked around with me because I was going to see it. And I said, "Do you want to come and see it with me?" And they said, "Yeah, okay, we'll come for a drive." And we went round it, and they were both really impressed with it, really impressed with it. But it was just a bit too early for them. So I guess maybe identifying the timing and and maybe going to an event. That would
You,
be the way I would.
you talk about go to an event.
Mm.
What kind of event?
Well, they have all sorts going on. So the knit and natters as an example, but they have coffee mornings, afternoon teas, dances, um, plays, all sorts of stuff going on, um, and with the sole purpose of inviting people in from the community, so that people get to see what this is like. I mean, there's one of the developments in Chester has got a nursery, children's nursery, fully operational, Ofsted
Wow.
regulated children's nursery within the development. I mean, that's fantastic. So
Sounds
you've got
amazing.
you've got children going there with their children and thinking about mum and dad and thinking, "Blimey, this is great."
More Christmas presents.
Well, and the children, and of course the children and the older relatives really get on well and talk to each other. And they gave me an example. I was up there actually a couple of weeks ago, and they gave me an example of a lady who asked her to buy the flat that was furthest away from the nursery because she really didn't want anything to do with the kids. She now helps out at the nursery every day and
Yeah,
reads.
he sounds like my ex-mother-in-law.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did you put your name down to be Father Christmas this year?
No.
No. Oh, you did take that apartment the furthest away in Exeter.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, dear.
Debbie, it's been amazing. Thanks so much for your time today. And I think there's a lot that we've touched upon that will be of great value to people that are thinking about or unsure about what options they have moving forward. I always ask my guests one simple question at the end, which is, if you had one piece of advice, what would that be?
Don't keep putting it off. Don't keep putting it off. Some operators now are offering a try before you buy. Go and live there for a bit. See what you think, genuinely what you think if you found one that you like. But don't keep putting it off. I hear too often people saying, "I wish I'd done this earlier." Don't put it off.
Maybe I could do that. Do a week in each one across the UK.
That would be interesting. You'd be an expert.
Yeah. Well, I don't plan to stay there. I just plan to use the facilities for a week.
And some of the facilities are amazing.
Fantastic. Debbie, again, thanks for your time today. If people want to find you or find Autumna, how do they do that?
But we are autumna.co.uk. So that's autumn with an A on the end. Or you can give us a call, 01892 335 330, and there will be somebody who can help you if you need some support. Or you can email me, Debbie, Debbie, @autumna.co.uk, and I'd be very happy to help.
Thank you. You've been amazing. Thanks for your time today. And from the Chasing Care podcast, until the next time, take care.